All right, so we're diving into Nottingham Forest's win against Manchester United at Old Trafford. Pretty wild stuff, right? I mean...
Yeah, you picked a good one for us to break down.
Forest's first win there in almost 30 years. It's kind of like stepping back in time a little bit.
Almost brings back memories of Leicester City's title run in 2016. You know, that real underdog story. Maybe Forest is on a similar path.
Yeah, maybe not a title run, but
yeah,
definitely making a statement. Okay, so let's set the scene a little bit. Manchester United going into this match, they're in 13th place. For a club like that, that's practically unheard of. They were coming off a loss to Arsenal midweek too. So
yeah.
The pressure was definitely on.
And for a team like Manchester United, that kind of pressure brings up a lot of questions about the manager, about their ability to attract top players. It's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. Forest, on the other hand, they were sitting pretty in 5th place under Nuno Espirito Santo. So the pressure was on both sides, but in very different ways. Before we jump into the action, though, let's quickly run through the lineups. Manchester United had their big guns out there. Onana in goal, De Ligt and Martinez at the back, Fernandes in the midfield, and of course, Rashford and Haaland up front.
And Forest had a solid lineup too. Turner was in goal, Milenkovic leading the defense, Gibbs-White in midfield, and Chris Wood up front. It's interesting, Wood was actually on the verge of making Forest history that night.
He certainly was. But first, let's talk about how Forest set the tone early. Just 9 minutes in, Milenkovic scores off a corner kick. 1-0 Forest. You got to imagine the Manchester United fans were pretty stunned.
Yeah, that early goal really threw Manchester United off balance. Their game plan kind of went out the window, and they were forced to play catch-up. You could see the frustration starting to build.
But, you know, Manchester United, even when they're struggling, they're still dangerous. In the 29th minute, Rashford sends a beautiful cross right to Haaland, who heads it in for the equalizer.
Classic Manchester United, right. Individual brilliance shining through. But what's interesting is even after they equalized, they never really found their rhythm.
And you mentioned earlier that Gibbs-White was a player to watch. Well, his performance in the first half definitely gave us a taste of what was to come. He was creating chances, finding space, and really keeping Man U's defense on edge.
His movement and his vision were crucial to Forest's success. It was like he could see the play developing before anyone else.
And then the second half starts, and things really take a dramatic turn. Just 3 minutes in, Gibbs-White unleashes this incredible curling shot, and Onana totally misjudges it. 2-1 Forest.
Yeah, Onana's positioning was off, but you have to give Gibbs-White credit for recognizing that weakness and exploiting it perfectly.
And before Man U could even catch their breath, Forest scores again. This time, it's Wood in the 55th minute with a looping header. Onana and De Ligt seem to have a complete communication breakdown, leaving Wood wide open.
Yeah, that second goal was a real dagger for Manchester United. And for Wood, this goal wasn't just about extending Forest's lead, it was about making history.
Absolutely. He became Forest's all-time leading Premier League goal scorer, surpassing Brian Roy. And after the match, Nuno Espirito Santo had some really interesting things to say about Wood.
We should definitely talk about that in part 2. Because Espirito Santo's comments really shed some light on his managerial style and what he saw in Chris Wood.
Sounds good. All right, we'll be right back after a quick break to unpack what Espirito Santo had to say about Wood, and then we'll get into the rest of the match and what this win means for both teams. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about Chris Wood's goal, the one that put Forest up 3-1 against Manchester United. And you mentioned that Nuno Espirito Santo had some interesting comments about Wood's performance. Yeah, he did. He didn't just talk about Wood's goal scoring. He talked about his work ethic, his leadership, his ability to really inspire his teammates. He basically said that Wood brings this grit and determination. It's infectious.
It's kind of like those classic sports movies, you know, where a coach sees potential in a player that everyone else overlooks. And in this match, it really felt like Wood played a key role in disrupting Manchester United's game.
Absolutely. You have to think about Forest's approach going into this match. They were facing a team with way more individual talent, a team that's used to controlling possession and dictating the pace. So Forest had to be incredibly disciplined and organized.
Like a well-oiled machine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Wood's physical presence up front was crucial to that strategy. He wasn't just there to score goals. He was there to battle for every ball to hold at play, to create space for his teammates.
He was like a battering ram wearing down Manchester United's defense, forcing them into mistakes.
And those mistakes led directly to Forest's second and third goals. De Ligt and Martinez, they just couldn't seem to handle Wood's physicality.
They looked frustrated out there, committing fouls, losing their composure.
Yeah, and that frustration kind of spread throughout the team.
Manchester United's midfield was struggling too. Casemiro, Mount Fernandez, all incredibly talented players, but they just couldn't get anything going.
It was almost like Forest's defensive solidity, their ability to close down space and anticipate passes. It completely disrupted Manchester United's system.
Yeah, they were forced to rely on moments of individual brilliance, like that stunning goal from Fernandez.
A beautiful goal, no doubt. But it kind of highlighted Manchester United's over-reliance on individual talent rather than a cohesive team performance.
Which brings us to the question of what this loss means for Manchester United moving forward. They're a club with a winning tradition, but they're clearly at a crossroads right now.
This defeat exposed some real flaws in their game, both tactically and mentally. It raises questions about the manager, about their ability to adapt.
Do you think this loss could be a turning point for them? A moment that forces them to reevaluate their approach?
It's definitely possible. Sometimes a tough loss like this can be the catalyst for change. Or it could be the start of a downward spiral.
And on the flip side, what does this win mean for Nottingham Forest? Can they keep this momentum going?
This win wasn't just about luck. It was a testament to their tactics, their organization, their belief in their manager's system.
It's almost like they've rediscovered that underdog spirit that took them to those European Cup titles back in the day.
And that connection to their history, that sense of legacy.
Yeah.
It could be a powerful motivator moving forward.
They've shown they can compete with the best.
But the Premier League is a marathon, not a sprint.
So true. Okay, so as we move into the final part of our deep dive, I think it would be really interesting to explore the historical context of this match a bit more. What do you think?
I think that's a great idea. Because when you look at the history, it adds a whole other layer of intrigue to this result.
Okay, so we're back, and you were saying that we should look at the historical context a bit.
Yeah, I think it adds a whole other dimension to this win, you know?
So tell me a little bit about Nottingham Forest's history. What makes this particular win so special?
We got to go back to the late 70s, early 80s. Nottingham Forest under Brian Clough, they won back-to-back European Cups.
Wow, back-to-back European Cups. That's incredible. So they were a real powerhouse back then.
They were a force to be reckoned with. Grit, determination, tactical brilliance. They really shook up the football world.
And now, all these years later, they go into Old Trafford and pull off another huge upset. It's almost like history repeating itself.
It is. And for Manchester United, this loss against a team with that kind of history, it has to sting a little bit more, you know?
Yeah, I can see that. It's like a reminder of their own legacy.
Yeah.
And the expectations that come with it.
Exactly. Manchester United is a club that's built on success. But lately, they've been struggling to live up to that legacy.
It feels like they're still trying to find their way.
And this loss to Forest, a team that embodies that underdog spirit, it makes them question their own identity a little bit.
It's like they're looking in a mirror, seeing a reflection of their past, and wondering if they can recapture that same magic.
It's a really interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
The past and present colliding.
Yeah.
These two clubs with such rich histories, both trying to find their place in the modern game.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some of the key takeaways here?
I think the biggest takeaway is that this match was more than just a game. It was a story about legacy, about the power of belief, about the unpredictable nature of football.
Yeah, and it reminds us that the past is never really gone. It shapes the present, and it definitely influences the future.
And for Manchester United, this loss could be a wake-up call, a reminder that they need to rediscover their hunger, their drive, if they want to get back to the top.
It's a challenge to adapt, to evolve, to never take success for granted.
Absolutely. So as you think about this match, think about what it tells us about the ebb and flow of power in football. Think about the legacy of these two clubs and what the future might hold for them.
Those are some great questions to ponder. And on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be back soon with another fascinating look at the world of sports.